Hey, what is going on? Okay, so I was telling you all the story about the straight or whatever dude who I was dating. I'm kidding. I know. Some of these stories that I tell, it's my life. I can't help it. It's my life. Don't you forget. Okay, so I was hanging out. So let me tell you all how I met this straight or whatever dude. Okay, and this is why I say he's straight or whatever. So I was at Frozen Yo and, getting me some good frozen yogurt. I was chilling by myself or whatever because, sometimes that's how it be. And in the Frozen Yo, when I chill by myself, I people watch. I'm very aware of my surroundings. And this gorgeous dude walked into the Frozen Yo. Okay, yes, he was my favorite. I know I seems like I'm constantly talking about them to you all, but yes, he was my thick dark chocolate dude. Like, I love me a thick dark chocolate dude. It is what it is. He was so beautiful and so fine, and he was thick and he was dark chocolate, y'all. I tell you what. I'm sorry because I was just thinking about it, but anyway. At Frozen Yo, I saw him. I made eye contact because, thirsty guys keep making eye contact with people, and that's me. I'm sorry. That's how I go. That's how I roll. That's how I roll. That was a song by Britney Spears, but it didn't come to mind. Anyway, so I made eye contact with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so beautiful. And he made eye contact with me or whatever, and he was like, oh, okay, And he sort of kept on about his business. He got his yogurt before I did, and he left the store before he got his yogurt, got out before I did. So, I was just like, well, it is what it is. This is something that happens. You see somebody beautiful, they walk into your life, and just that quickly, pow, they walk right out of your life. It is what it is. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get my frozen yogurt anyway, and I'm going to keep on listening to my podcast. And out of nowhere, I thought he had left, walked out of my life, but he walked right back in, and he sits down in the chair right next to me, while I'm playing my podcast and eating my yogurt. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, how often does this happen, So what I do is I'm like, okay, Aaron, don't be so very antisocial. And maybe what you can do is take out one of your earpieces, and in case he says something, so you can hear it. And sure enough, I took out my earpiece, I kept on eating, and kept on listening to my podcast in my other ear. And he started talking to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And you know what he said to me? This is why I call him straight or whatever. But one of his lines is he was like, man, for somebody who looks as good as you, man, I bet you have girls constantly throwing themselves at you. And I was like, no, girls don't throw themselves at me. And also, boys don't throw themselves at me. But out of the two, my preference would be the boys to throw themselves at me. And, he was like, oh, okay, whatever, cool. And we just kept on talking, chopping it up, whatever. And so then I was like, well, for a guy as gorgeous as you, I bet girls have to constantly be throwing themselves at you. And he was like, no, not really. He's like, I used to have a girlfriend, but not anymore. It's been a few years, 5. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Sorry to hear that, blah, 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 blah. In the back of my mind, I was processing okay, this is probably a same-gender loving individual who tried to swim in the saltwater ocean, but then realized that he would prefer to be grazing among the cattle and get some good beef. So anyway, we talked, and eventually he was like, hey, so why don't you, I have to go, but why don't you walk me to my car? And I'm like, woo-wee! We went to his car. He was like, yeah, so this is my car. So I got to go, but, why don't you give me your number? And I was like, woo-wee! I was like, take me right now. I gave him my number, and he's like, so call me around 11 or whatever. Anyway, so we hung out like a few times. He never made a pass at me. He never asked me to spread my legs for him. He never asked me to spread his legs for him. He never even asked me what that mouth do. I was like, goodness gracious. You know, so I guess he really is straight or whatever. So anyway, fast forward to the time we hung out. So we hung out a number of times or whatever, and it was cool or whatever. He never made a pass at me. I never made a pass at him because I respect. If somebody says that they're straight, I'm just going to, you know, until you prove otherwise, I'm not going to act otherwise. So anyway, I'm like, he's straight, whatever. One time I was like, okay, you know, let's hang out, and we could go to Kava. You know, that's like a quick serve restaurant out here in D.C. You know, quick serve restaurants like at Chipotle and Noodles and Company, stuff like that. You know, something cheap and cute. You know, I was like, we can go to Kava or whatever. And, you know, of course, you know, the whole I don't got no money thing. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it's cool. You know, I'll pay for, because, you know, thirsty guys pay. We pay when you're thirsty and desperate. You have to pay. So it is what it is. So I was like, oh, well, you know, I'll pay. Don't even worry about it. I got you. I got you on this one. So he's like, cool. And you know what's so ironic? Because a friend of mine, I remember when he used to date dudes and he would always have to pay and he'd tell me about it. And I'd be like, see, what you need to do is you need to date dudes that you don't always got to pay for, you know? Or if you got to pay and you like the dude, y'all need to do something free, you know, something cheap or free. You know, it's ironic that now that the ball is in my court, I'm like, I'll pay thirsty party of one, waiting for a second. He's going to come. But I was like, I'll pay. So he says he'll meet me at Kava. And I'm like, oh, yay, I'm super excited, you know. And he didn't make it there at the time that he said he would. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I've been on my whole optimism tip and not stressing things. So I was like, you know, I'm going to just go ahead and eat my food. Shoot, this is a place that I enjoy. I'm just going to eat here. You know, it is what it is. I'm not even, and I didn't even give it a second thought. You know, I got my podcast going, got my food, and I started eating. And sure enough, out of the blue, he comes up to me. He's like, hey, what's up, mister? And I'm like, oh, hey. You know, and at that time, at that point, I was kind of already over it as far as the hanging out for the day. I was like, I don't really need to deal with people. You ever get to that point where you're like, you know, I'm not really a fan of dealing with people right at this particular moment, so I don't think I'm going to be good for that. But he was like, hey, you know, so why don't we go on up and take a look at what they have, which, of course, was just his way of saying, hey, you know, you said you were going to pay for me, and I came late, but you still have to pay for me, so let's go back up to the line and get my food. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. You know, I put my fork down, stopped my eating, and I was like, okay, cool. But, like, I just remember, like, after we got his food and we were just there talking, he got a cup of water, which in my mind didn't register as anything because I was like, okay, you know, I'm paying for it and whatever. You know, whenever I go here, I always get a cup of water, so it's whatever. He got a cup of water. He goes to fill it up from the soda machine. How freaking gangsta ghetto do you have to be to do that? Especially considering that I said I was gonna pay. I didn't say I'm gonna pay, but you better get you some water because I ain't paying for your soda. What? Like what? Who does that? I'm sorry. Question. You know, like what's the deal? You know. So he filled it up with soda, and I'm like, I'm not gonna let you steal from this place. So what I did was I went ahead. And I got up and I was like, hey, we're going to have a soda cup after all. Going to have a soda cup. And they're like, okay, cool. You know, I get the soda cup. Tell me why when I bring it back to him and Gangstalicious, tell me why when I bring it back to Gangstalicious, he's like, boy, don't bother me with that cup. I'm good. And still continue to go back throughout the course of the evening and get more refills and not fill it up in the soda cup that I bought, but fill it up in the water cup. How Gangstalicious do you have to be to do that? Isn't that stupid? That's just stupid. That was stupid. I don't understand. Anyway, whatever, y'all. Talk to y'all later. Y'all ain't nothing but a party. Yup, sure enough.